Good day and welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at the data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I'm your host, Preston Proctor. So tonight's game is on the road, and the opponents are the Arizona Coyotes. They are 30, 37, and 5, 19, 17, and 0 at home. So you can tell right off the bat they're better at home than on the road. The Coyotes are in 7th place in the Central Division with 65 points. They have been eliminated from playoff potential, being 21 points behind Vegas with only 10 games left. Vegas being the second wild card spot currently. They are 18 points ahead of last place Chicago with the same number of games played. In their last 10 games, they are 5-5, winning 2 of their last 3 against Columbus and Seattle and losing to Dallas. Also of note, at the end of January, they had a 14 game losing streak. A 14-game losing streak. Wow. I think they got a couple overtime losses, but 14-game losing streak. Tonight's game is the 4th game of a 7-game homestand for the Coyotes. And at the trade deadline, the Coyotes made 3 trades. They traded with Tampa Bay, Nashville, and Edmonton. Of course, Nashville got Jason Zucker, forward, for a 6th-round pick in 2024. Interesting, the trades that with the other teams, Tampa and Edmonton, they also gave up picks. So to Tampa Bay, they traded defenseman Matt Dumba and a 7th-round pick in 2025, and they got a 5th-round pick in 2027. Okay. Seems a little weird, but whatever. So they gave up a defenseman and a 7th-round pick in 2025 for a 5th-round pick in 2027. Okay. Edmonton, even more strange. They traded defenseman Troy Stecher for a 7th-round pick in 2024. For a 4th-round pick in 2027, they must have some amazing plans for a couple of years from now. I don't know, it kind of reminds me a little bit about Draft Day, you know, movie Draft Day, where they seem to be trading all of their picks away for a player, except, I don't know, they're not getting players. I don't know what's going on in Arizona. Maybe they don't either. Maybe that's about all you can say. It's too bad. We, really like the Coyotes. I think they got a great logo. Their old stadium was fun. We saw a game. We went down there for one game. My wife thought we'd go to see the Kings play on my birthday, and instead of playing in LA, they were actually in Arizona. So we went down to Arizona and saw them play on my birthday. I think they lost. We were not good luck for the Kings for a while. One year it was great. I mean, every game we went to, they won, including games in the playoffs. I think they won the Stanley Cup that year. And then one year we were like the kiss of death if we showed up. And so I wouldn't go. As much as I wanted to go see a game, I'm like, oh man, if we go and they lose. I started tracking that with the Preds earlier this year. The Preds seemed to, on home games that we didn't go to, had a much better record than the home games that we went to. I think that's been remedied because they've been playing better and, the winning. And speaking of the Preds and how good they are playing, they are 43-25-4 now. 22-10-3 away, winning Tuesday in overtime at home against Vegas. Boy, wasn't that a game. Well, I mean, holy cow. Now, I wasn't going to bring it up because this is an away game, so I usually talk about away game stats. But I had been kind of tracking this circumstance at home where if they lost the first period, they lost the game. Well, they didn't on Tuesday night. They got hammered in the first period. There I go, whistling my S's again. Let's see what I can do about that. Hammered in the first period, and then came back and tied it up and then won it in overtime. Boy, what a game. What a game. That was so much fun to watch. Okay, in the last 10 games, the Preds are still 8-0-2. They've been 8-0-2 for the longest time. They're still 8-0-2. Overtime losses to Montreal at home and Minnesota on the road. And they are still 4-0-1, both at home and away over that stretch. Since February 16th, the U2 concert decision, they are 16-0-2. So an 18-game point streak. Just amazing, playing so well right now. Arizona is the first game in this 2-game road trip. Next up is Colorado on Saturday. I'll be doing my podcast tomorrow. I'll be out of town over the weekend. Not in Colorado. I will not be at that game. I have been to a game in Colorado. I like the stadium. I don't have it. I don't like Colorado. I mean, Camino Kings fan, hated playing Colorado. Oh my gosh. I've finally gotten used to Philip Forsberg and cheering for him because for the longest time, a Forsberg played for Colorado, and he was such a good player. Oh my gosh. So I kind of had a little PTSD when I came to Nashville, and Forsberg was the big name here. Getting over it. I am getting over it. I promise. I still don't like Colorado. I have no reason to like Colorado. They're always playing against my teams. I could not like Colorado. There. This is good for me. But what are we talking about? The 2-game road trip. They'll play Colorado on Saturday, playing Arizona tonight. That's the 2-game road trip. Avalanche are currently second in the Central. Dallas and the Avalanche are kind of swapping places these days. Winnipeg has dropped off. We'll see how that goes. I think it's still pretty much coin flip, a 3-sided coin, or maybe my Dungeons and Dragons dice, to see which one of these will be the division winner. Got about 10 games left, right? So after this 2-game road trip, the Preds are then back here at home for 2. Then they're away for 2. Then they're home for 1, away for 1, home for 1, away for 1. Bouncing around the Midwest in the last 4 games between here, Chicago, and Pittsburgh. Okay, so I guess that's not too bad. The travel, not too bad. When I was a grad student, I worked on a project at Georgia Tech to look at the scheduling for the baseball's American League. There was this belief that I think it was the previous year, the Mets were like the best year. So it's been like 1988, something like that, where the Mets were the best team, but they had the worst travel schedule. And so they were just exhausted because of all the flying and traveling. And so one of the projects I worked on was to come up with, use artificial intelligence, and that was worked with from the Artificial Intelligence Lab at Georgia Tech Research Institute. That's where I got my master's degree in computer science. And my project was to try to design a schedule for the American League of Baseball. While I was doing this, the guy who was funding our project died, and so our funding went away, so I had to find another project. It wasn't nearly as interesting. But I have kind of an eye for traveling, scheduling that seems to be a little bit more difficult because of this experience that I had with this project. So it's always been on the back of my mind that I could do it better. Of course, back then, I think they were taking commercial flights, and now I don't think that's the case. So they don't have to worry. It's not as big a deal because some cities you couldn't fly direct to from other cities. So anyhow, that's the travel schedule for the Preds. With just a little side note. So that's the schedule, upcoming schedule. 2 at home, 2 away, then 4 games alternating home and away, finishing the season away. And so the Preds are 4th in the Central Division with 90 points. They are 4 points behind Winnipeg now, even on games played. Dallas is on top. Is Dallas on top? I think it's Colorado's second. Yeah, Dallas is on top with 99 points. And then Colorado at 97 points, 3 points ahead of Winnipeg. Neither of them has secured a playoff spot. I did see where the Rangers, I think, are the first team to secure a playoff spot. I think they have less than 100 points. So I think it used to be 90 points. If you got to 90 points, you were pretty much sure. But now I think it's 100 to be sure. You could get in with less. But neither of them have secured their spot yet. I'm sure it won't be too long before one team or another starts getting their guaranteed spot. So Dallas is on top with 99 points. The Preds are at 90, so there's a 9-point gap there. Winnipeg at 94 and Colorado at 97. So Dallas has played one more game than the Jets, Avs, and Preds. And Winnipeg has lost their last 4 games. The Devils, the Islanders, the Caps, and then they lost to Edmonton in overtime the other night. So that's how they got 1 point. I thought it was going to be 3. I saw they lost. I thought, Nashville really, closed to 3, but it's 4. I mean, they're 4 points ahead of Nashville with about 10 games to go. So it's looking a little more reasonable, but I don't think we can really expect Winnipeg to keep losing. But, stranger things have happened. It'd be great to be the 3rd division instead of a wild card. But there you go. All right. So, yes, and I was going to make the comment that I thought Colorado would beat Montreal, and they lost, and I thought Winnipeg would lose to the Rangers, and they beat them. So I am going to stop predicting victories for other teams. I promise. Okay. Arizona, Anaheim, Chicago, and San Jose have all been eliminated. Seattle is 15 points out with 11 games left, and so is Calgary, 15 points and 11. So, in my mind, that's kind of pretty much out of reach. It would just be something amazing for them to come back and get a playoff spot, being that far out with so few games left. Tonight's matchup with Arizona is the 3rd and final game with Arizona this year. The Preds have split the games with Arizona, with the home team winning each time. So we need to break that trend. The Preds lost 3-2 in January and won 5-4 in overtime in February. In January, at the 3-2 loss, the Preds had just beaten LA and lost to Vegas. This was the beginning of a 2-6-1 stretch, which led up to the U2 concert decision. The win for Arizona started a 2-game winning streak, followed by their 14-game losing streak. In scoring, Arizona got 1 in the first, 2 in the second, sandwiching Nashville's goal, and the Preds into scoring with 1 at about 18:44 in the 3rd period. In the 5-4 win in overtime in February, so they played fairly close together. because beating Arizona ended a 3-game losing streak, but was followed by the 2 losses, including the 9-2 drubbing by Dallas. So this was still part of that 2-6-1 stretch that losing in January started. And so they wound up winning in Arizona, and then, boy, 2 games later. But it's all roses since then, right? For Arizona, losing to Nashville was the 5th game of a 14-game losing streak. 14-game losing streak. Kept looking at that going, that can't be right. 14-game losing streak. Wow. Can you imagine? And for the scoring in this game, Nashville got the first goal and got one in the first, followed 42 seconds later by Arizona's goal. I always hate that. The Kings used to do that all the time. Get a goal, and then within a minute, give it back. Hate that. All right. Well, then both teams got one in the second. I think it was in the same order, Nashville and then Arizona. And then Arizona got 2 goals early in the third, so they were up 4-2. And then Nashville scored 2. Went to overtime, and the Preds got the game winner at 1:36 in overtime. Arizona enters the game tonight on a 4-game streak of alternating wins and losses. The Preds are on a 6-game winning streak and an 18-game points streak. So let's hope the Preds streaks continue. So what can we expect from the Preds on the road? Well, first of all, they're 22-10-3 on the road. Their last road game was last Thursday, the 3-0 win over Florida, who is second in the Atlantic Division. So that was a good win, a strong win, scoring 1 goal in each period, winning all 3 periods, which you don't need to have data to figure out. It's hard to lose. I think you could say it's impossible to lose if you outscore the opponents in all 3 periods of a 3-period game. So there you go. So that was a 1-game road trip. That game was sandwiched by games at home. So that was the last game on the road. Definitely a good experience. So how do they perform by periods? Again, when I start talking about this, it's talking about that individual period. Did they outscore the opponent? Did they tie the opponent? Did they score less than the opponent? win, tie, lose. On the road, pretty even on how they perform in each period. The first period, 15, 9, and 11. So 15 times they've won, 9 they've lost, and 11 they've tied. The second is fairly even at 14, 13, and 8. So fairly even on winning and losing. The ties are a little bit lower. And in the third, really even at 13, 11, and 11. Overtime, 1, 3, and 2, and shootouts 2 and 0. So pretty even on how they overall score or outplay the opponent. All of that has gotten a lot better over the last 18 games. When they get the first goal, they are 18-3-1. If the first goal happens in the first period, they are 15-3-1. And if the first goal happens in the second period, they're undefeated, 3-0-0. If they do not get the first goal, they are 4-7-2. 3-6-2 if it's the first period, 1-1-0 if it's the second. Oddly enough, on the road, the first goal has not been in the third period. It's happened a few times at home, including the game against Detroit about a week ago. But it has not happened on the road. It's very interesting. The road stats and the home stats there's certain things that just are so different. It's just, that's, you got to play the game, right? If they win the first period, their record is 12-2-1. 3-5-1 if they lose, 7-3-1 if they tie. So if they win or tie, they have winning records. If they lose 3-5-1, that's not terrible. Counterbalanced by how good they are if they win the first period. I guess, there you go. If they only win one period, they're 6-6. If they only lose one period, 9-2. If they tie two periods on the road, they're 6-1. If they win two periods, they're 15-0. If they lose two periods, they're 0-8. Some of this might make perfect sense, but interestingly enough, at home, I think they're 1-8 if they lose two, and that's because they lost like the first and second periods, tied it up in the third, went to overtime and won. So they won the third period and the overtime, and lost the first and second. So, but 0-8. Winning two periods is a pretty good indicator. If you win two periods, boy, there you go. Winning three, I don't have the data on this, but there you go. They won all three against Florida and won the game. So that's a data point. When the Preds win, 45% of the time, the winning goal is in the third period. 14% of the time it's in the first, and 27% in the second. And that's one of those contrasts with how they play at home, because at home, their highest percentage for the winning goal being scored when they win is in the second. On the road, it's in the third. When they lose on the road, the winning goal has never been in the first period. As I said, that they're 14% getting the winning goal in the first period. That happened obviously against the Panthers the other night. They scored a goal in each of the periods, but the Florida did not score. So the game-winning goal was the goal in the first period. That has not happened to the Preds. I think that's amazing. However, when they do lose, 54% of the time, the winning goal is in the second period. 54%. I guess if it's 0 in the first, those percentage points have to go somewhere, right? Winning goals got to happen somewhere. So it looks like the second period. 23% in third and 23% in overtime. Also very interesting, the percentages that are the same. Overall, and that's, to contrast overall, where the winning goal in the second or third period is 35%. So overall, 35% for the second period, the other team winning 54% in the second period. So that's pretty significant. And then overall 14% in the first and 14% in overtime. That 14% in the first is all Preds winning. Looking at scoring by period. Overall, the Preds have outscored their opponents in all three periods by 7 in the first, 2 in the second, 3 in the third, which is, another one of those things that's different, because at home they're being outscored in the first and second. Not so much in this last 18-game stretch. It's amazing how your statistics can change when you're on an 18-game point streak and 16-0-2. But on the road, and they've had most of the year they've had a better record on the road than at home. Again, that has kind of changed. It's gotten better at home. They used to have a losing record. When I started doing my podcasts, they had a losing record at home. Now it's a winning record. But they are still being outscored at home in the first and second. Things on the road, as far as goal scoring goes, since February 16th, it is similar on the road to what it is to overall on the season, 7, 5, and 9. So since February 16th, they have outscored on the road the opponents by 7 overall in the first period, 7. Since February 16th, they've outscored in the second period by 5, and overall it's 2. And then 9. Well, I guess that is a significant difference. The third period, now since February 16th, they have outscored the opponents by 9 versus 3 overall. All these just statistics on the road. In the first, the roughly half the time, they are as likely to outscore the opponents by 1 as to be outscored by 1. So, about 25% of the times they get outscored by 1, 25% of the times they outscore by 1, and in a third of the time, it's a tie. So, pretty good bet that the delta at the end of the first period is going to be 1, or 1 or less anyway. So the second period is about the same as the first, with a tie dropping to 23% from 33%. So again, the likelihood in the second period is that the delta will be 1 or less. Again, still roughly about 50% to get outscored by 1 or outscore by 1. And then in the third period, the likelihood of a 1-goal differential for either team is 20% and a third for a tie. So that's, that's it there. There's, if I remember looking at it right, in the first period, there were percentages for the Preds to outscore the opponents by more than 1, but not to be outscored by more than 1. I think those were 0. That's another interesting thing. The second period, I think it was a higher likelihood to be outscored by 2 or more by the opponents than the Preds, but I forget what the numbers were. I was looking for the main. This is a new stat, those of you that have been listening. And so I'm, still looking at my numbers and trying to see what makes sense and what's interesting to talk about. And, these percentages around the outscoring of a delta of 1 or less is really kind of interesting. Interesting stat. They have not been outscored by more than 1 on the road in the first period. Wow. That would not have guessed that. So, and the other night against Vegas, they got outscored by 3 in the first period, but that was at home, and this is a road game. So there you have it. The Preds are in Arizona tonight to play the Coyotes. The Coyotes have made some interesting trades. They have not improved for that. They've had some rough patches in their schedule. They are still dangerous. They are still beating good teams, especially at home. So this is not going to be a cakewalk for the Preds. They're going to have to be on their game. It's going to be kind of like the San Jose game that they played the other week where, it would be an easy game for them to not pay attention or to be looking past to Colorado, right? We got Colorado on Saturday, so it's easy to say, hey, we're thinking about Colorado, and then, Arizona's, they're still playing. They're still playing hockey in Arizona. Granted that they're at the college stadium now, and not where they were for most of the time they've been in Arizona, but hey, that's still an ice rink. They're still playing hockey. You got to watch out for them. So keep your heads up. Hopefully the Preds will go in there, get the first goal. win the first period, and then we're on our way. Win the second period, and that's it. Game's over. Win 2 periods on the road. Hey, solid. So, good luck. Gonna be a fun game tonight. I hope that is a fun game to watch, and not scary, like the Vegas game. That one was hard. And then when they started scoring, then, you could start feeling better and feeling better and feeling better. And then, when they tied it up and went to overtime, it's like, wow, holy cow. Good job, guys. So very exciting. Don't want that kind of excitement tonight. Geez. Can only take so much. All right. Well, that's the show for today. Thanks for listening. I am Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity. Clivity.